Hello, everybody. Welcome back. It's Creative Redundancy back again, the one known as CR, like it says on your screen. And welcome to this, hopefully, an ongoing series in time, chatting with CR. And specifically in this case, or in this stream/replay, it's about editing. I'm going to dive into the editing aspect in terms of video editing and such, because as a content creator, for the most part, some of us, not all of us, do some form of editing one way or another. Maybe it's as simple as splicing, and maybe it's a little bit more intermediate or advanced, like adding in a title, adding in an intro, adding in uh a thumbs up. So if you enjoy what you're gonna be hearing on this, hit me on a big thumbs up. Ciara greatly appreciates it. So while I'm waiting for some people to drop in here, I just want to mention that I've been for a little bit now. It's just kind of been understanding about doing this by actually doing it. You know, I'm no expert at this. I've just been trying to do this by actually doing it, right? And trying out the stuff that's actually out there right now, right? You know, I went from using, you know, a laptop/desktop, so like programs on a desktop, for example, and now I'm trying stuff on the mobile side, the apps. You know, I mean, and these are things I've used. There's no affiliation or sponsorship or anything like that, right? I mean, these are things that I've tried out personally. Because as a content creator, there's things out there that you can see, right? There's tutorials out there and stuff like that. So, I mean, editing is one of those things. It's just like anything. It's just like it can be daunting at first because the way that it's a new thing, right? I mean, I remember when I was editing in the beginning, like a long time ago and stuff like that. It can be daunting. There's like things you want to learn about it. Things, best practices and stuff like that. And you're just like, where do I start? Where do I start? You know? And you want to be like, you see, tutorials and stuff like that, where you see the cool things that people do out there, the cool intros and the effects and the graphics and all that stuff that people put out there, and just like, and maybe you're thinking to yourself, hey, could I do this? Could I do something like this? It'd be cool if I could do something like this. And yes, it would be cool if you could do something like this too. Because I truly believe that you guys and gals, people out there can do something similar to this. So give me a notification if you can hear me. By the way, just making sure. Hopefully everything's. I'm assuming right now, because right now my side device that I'm listening in is not queuing in here for me. Well, I'm assuming that people can hear me. Anyways, regardless, I'll keep going here. So, like I said, because I've heard you guys have been giving me some encouraging feedback and such, right? Right? Encouraging has CR in it, right? And stuff like that. So I figure I cover with CR in it in this part of it. And I've decided to use this as my icon for this chatting with CR, specifically about editing. And this is actually just a screenshot that I have of it's just a sample clip that I had from before. So I figure I bring it in. Something I actually, well, it's a screenshot from something from a video that I made. You may have seen tidbits or pieces of it, so to speak. You might have seen it in some of the really short videos or short clips I put out there and stuff like that, maybe on my other social media and stuff like that. And that's just here on, not only here on YouTube, for example. I'm just gonna check out on something real quick here. Yeah. So while I wait for some people to drop in, and of course, feel free to ask some questions, post some comments in the comment section after, if you're catching this on the replay. You know, for the people checking this out on the replay, because you know, like I'm still a student at this. I know I'm still a student at this. Maybe more, maybe a little bit more intermediate at times, but you know, I was there at the beginning stage and stuff like that. You know, and just like stuff like that, and I just start to realize how I start to enjoy it. You know, I started to enjoy the creation, the digital creation mode, right? DCL and stuff like that, and it just kind of made progress in time, right? You know, and I've tried out quite a bit of stuff in the past too, right? Not just currently too, but in the past too, and I've seen how far the applications and the programs have progressed, especially as the tech part of it, the hardware part has gotten better, you know more processing power, more memory, and all this other stuff, and started to learn the keyboard shortcuts on a desktop or laptop that allow you to be more quicker in doing certain tasks or doing certain things, like the control or command S, to save your work and stuff like that, to copy and pasting and stuff like that, control or command C, depending on what you're using for your operating system, your OS, right? So know control V to paste it and stuff like that, right? It can help, right? It does allow you to your workflow a little bit faster. And I've been developing my workflow onto it a little bit more. At times I'm just sometimes a little bit sluggish at times, then there's other times where I'm just like I'm spot on what I want. Where you're seeing in your mind using your imagination, right? Because pretty much you're using your imagination to kind of put something onto the screen, and obviously you're recording something for the most part, voicing over, I don't know, using stock image, stock videos or something like that. It really does depend on what kind of content you want to make. I mean, like I've said in the past, I've done a gaming channel in the past, so this is where the experience of editing came from the past, right? However, that was, showing game footage and stuff like that. I never really did voiceover that, and that was quite a long time ago. And, I think I had a banner at the bottom and stuff like that. There was maybe at times a slight intro, maybe sometimes music, but, I made progress from that sense. Because I feel like you know, like anything, right? I feel like I've been making progress in it, and it's less daunting to me in terms of doing it, just because, I I start to understand some of the concepts. I mean, there's always gonna be more advanced concepts, just like anything, but I've started to learn more about the not just the beginning or, you know, beginner type of concepts, but start to understand more the more advanced concepts and stuff like that. And like you said, the functionality in terms of what you can do has totally like ch- you know increased since the beginning, right? Since my since my times of doing a gaming channel and stuff like that, where you know it's not just like the screen resolution is going up and going up, right? From HD now to 4K and such, right? From standard definition one, from what you're able to do, right? Like the functionality and stuff like that. So like things like more advanced things like keyframing, you know. I've talked about this before, the keyframing like in the past in a more open live CR chit chat. But this is more specifically about editing, so I'm gonna stick with the editing theme as much as possible. Because you want to get your message across on the platforms, right? And stuff like that. Get your message across as best as you can. Try to engage the audience, your side chat, in this case for me, or your live streams, or in your videos that you post on social media. Because you're trying to draw attention to your message, you know. And I guess my message is obviously creating or being creative, right? A little less on the redundancy side on the stream slash replay, but it's definitely gonna be a more emphasis on the creation part, the creative part, right? And like I said, in this case, digital creating, right? It's not there. I might touch base on audio and the photo stuff, but this is generally more on the video side of of well, content creating. Because, like I said, there's a lot of applications or slash programs. I use them kind of interchangeably, but apps on a mobile side, programs on like a desktop, laptop, computer type side. All right. I mean, I've tried mm, across many platforms too, right? The operating systems, right, and stuff like that. I've tried stuff out, and you know, from keyboard, mouse to now, I'm slowly getting into like using a mobile side of things too, where I'm using apps and stuff like that. And generally speaking, all of them will do video. you know, I guess that's goes without saying, right? All of them will do video, right? But some of them have different little things, right? Where it's like you will notice it as you would play around with it, or maybe you see tutorials or something like that on how to's and stuff like that. This is not a how to, by the way. I mean, I've shown stuff in the past, like I said, with on the program side, using an open source video editor of a program like like OpenShot, for example, right? I still like it, by the way. I haven't used it for a while, but I still like it on the desktop laptop side. Allows you to do keyframes and all that stuff, and there's these other little things I do like about it and stuff like that. You know, and basically those, you know, but even before that, I was using some other stuff on like I didn't know what keyframes were at first in the past, right? It's more recently, I guess, within the last 5, 6 years that, well, probably 9 now, I've started to use them more and more and more, right? But those allow you to do so much, you have so much more control in what you could be doing, right? Like I said, it's the limitations of the hardware and the software, right? I mean, like in my mind, when I see things, I'm like, ooh, this would look really cool, right? If I could pull this off, right? And I try to pull something off where I'm like trying to translate what I see in my mind to something on screen. And obviously, with the limitation of the hardware and the software or the apps in this case. So, if you're new at video editing or editing in general, you know, I know it can be daunting, but I also know that many of you can learn this stuff, or even learn more basic stuff to kind of get started and kind of go beyond just recording and uploading. you know, where it's like you're going to like splicing, for example, and just just making progress in it and advancing it into it, and you know, next thing you're acquiring per se learning how to edit and learning the ways of the app, ways of the software, right? The terminology, right? There's, like I said, there's a bunch of terminology out there, and and stuff like that. You know, Honestly, I think everyone is familiar what videos are, or what images or pictures are, and what music or audio is. So, you know, next thing you know, you're starting to add in like your channel icon, your channel icon, avatar, something like that. Pictures of your cast that you green screened in, you know, that you had your cat going past a white, your black cat going by a white boy. And next thing you know, you've added that into your videos because you start to learn. Oh yeah, I can remove the background and then just have my cat going by and just have that and slow that down and have that as an intro for my videos on my, because everyone likes my cat or something like that. People like to see the animals, like the pets and stuff like that. So I figure I share a little bit more into this than some of my other videos or live streams, a little bit more into depth. I mean, and I'm like I said, I'm hoping to do this kind of series of editing a little bit more and get more back into it as much as possible. Because, like I said, here specifically like on YouTube, because I'm streaming to it right now, but on our social media, we all know, right? That do video or allow you to do stuff like that, right? Getting your message across, it's nice, you know, and having people hear you out is nice because, allows your message to get across, right? What you want to say. People can understand your point of view on it and stuff like that. So let's go get into the more technical side, the more techie side, the more geeky side of this stream here. After like a quick 15-minute, 20-minute intro here. So when you start editing, regardless if it's on a desktop, laptop, or on your mobile device, I think it goes without saying, you know, preparation is key. Just like in a lot of things and things I've said in the past. And with my other streams and videos, right? Preparation is key. Do it as much as possible, right? You know, it might save you time or effort or a headache later on, right? So, you try to talk as loud as you can in the videos so you don't have to raise up the volume in post, for example, using, and I understand about the hardware and stuff like that, use what you got, honestly upgrade as you can, right? Lapel mics and all that stuff, wireless mics, whatever, right? I mean, You know, if you gotta talk in your phone directly, that's one, you know, voiceover, you know, that's what you got, right? But it may help in time to upgrade, right? I know trying to upgrade as I can and stuff like that. I mean, right now I'm using a wireless headset, so I can migrate around while I'm doing the stream and stuff like that. So setting up your stuff, right? So on a desktop side or laptop side, right? You know, on your quote unquote desktop, right? Or where you want to store the videos and such, right? After you've recorded your content, right? You know, you have the lighting, you've set up the lighting and all that stuff. Make sure, you know, minimal background noise, maybe minimal music, you know, maybe not have the TV, you know, playing in the background. Also, with stuff like TV, movies, and stuff like that, you don't want that sound coming through in the background so much, especially, you know, maybe here on YouTube, because you may get, you know, it may trigger, you know, copyrights and stuff like that because, you know, you got XYZ movie or music or a music video playing in the background. Yeah, you're probably not, it's probably not trigger that. So, you know, you try to lower that down and trying to like have a nice quiet area that you can record and stuff like that. The best that you can, right? I mean, it's hard, you know, and stuff like that, and the limitations of the hardware and stuff like that you have. Sorry about that. Just give me one moment here. Yeah. So the limitations of the hardware that you have. I mean, if you're trying to do this, like I said, and set up something to use and such, you know, set it up right, the lighting and stuff like that. You know, like I said, it really does depend on the kind of content you're wanting to create. I mean, like, there's gaming channels out there, right? There's people that do reviews on gear, um, gear or you know gadgets and tech and stuff like that. You know, cooking videos out there, how to DIY type of videos, instructional type of videos, nature videos and stuff like that. You know, and you can go online, you know, see other videos, get ideas, get a sense of, you know, how is this that community that you're into, like the gaming community, how are people doing it? How are people doing it? How are people approaching it? You know, what are they doing that seems to be kind of cool or, you know, you know, seems informative or something like that. Or let's say, like I said, if it's a how-to video or something like that, how are people approaching it, right? You know, where they're getting their message across, where you can do something very similar, right? Something very similar, but you put your own spin on it, your own branding on it, you know, where you put, you know, your icon in there and stuff like that. So after doing all of that stuff, right? Right. And hopefully it's not too echoey or something like that. And so, you know, if you get a, you know, leash, you know, something on the ground or something like that that's out of frame to kind of absorb some of the noise and something like that, especially if you're in certain rooms and stuff like that, right? You know, let's say you're doing a how to or something in a washroom. Well, there may be some echo or something like that. Or you're in a hall or something like that. You're just trying to show something. Well, you know, work with what you have, right? You know, do some sound tests or video tests beforehand and get a sense of, you know, a sense the room, right? Get a sense of the room. Because it may help you be like, oh, maybe I should move the camera over here. It sounds better over here, or looks better over here. The lighting's better over here, right? And just kind of be like, just looking and be like, yeah, I think this point of view is a lot better. It looks more entertaining, interesting. This point of view, right? Stuff like that. That way, it kind of looks like you took some time to prepare for it as much as possible. So, in terms of the preparedness side of like doing it, right? I guess it's a little bit tad different on a mobile side, but on a laptop or a desktop side, when you're using apps, right? Obviously, regardless of what application or program is, there's still certain things you are universal, right? Regardless of the application or the program that you do use. So, you set up a folder, let's say a dedicated folder that says whatever name, like a project X ABC. Maybe you date it and stuff like that. You copy your video footage that you have from your camera or phone or whatever, and you copy it to your laptop or desktop and put it into that folder so you have a backup copy of it. So you have, until you're ready to, and you can also back that up onto a, external hard drive and stuff like that and have some more redundancies in place for it, right? Because you don't want to lose footage or anything like that. That happens, right? That definitely does happen, and it's not pretty. That's for sure. It's not pretty having to recreate or reshoot, right? Because obviously, stuff like movies and stuff like that, reshoots are very expensive because you got to rehire everyone, scheduling, sets, setting up the sets again, and all that stuff, and it's just more of hassle and reduces the flow of the creation of the video, for example. Now, obviously, this is more in tune with like social media, right? Like here on YouTube. So yeah, you would set up like a folder, name it like I said, Project One ABC, whatever it is that you're doing. If it's a if it's a gaming channel, for example, this is how to do this in the game. This is how you get by one of the obstacles in this game or something like that. So you would copy it over, maybe copy it over to an external hard drive, still keep it on your phone or memory card for a little bit as long as possible, right? Until, that way, if you're gonna revert back to the original, you still have a copy of the original. You know, corrupt files and stuff like that, lost files can happen, right? It's happened before to me too, so yeah, it's a painful lesson. Something I always try to remember, no matter what, right? Back up your stuff, right? Back up your stuff. Nothing worse than losing all 60 hours worth of work to have to do it again. It sucks, definitely. So let's say, you've imported your stuff and stuff like that, right? And try to like, you know, if you're randomly recording, let's just say random shots or something like that, trying to reorganize them in a certain order, right? Where it's like a story, right? Where, you know, let's say these clips were out of order, but you wanted to put them back into order. Well, you might do that on in that folder right away and just be like, take a look. It's like maybe put it like a one or something like that, or this is intro or something like that. This is outro. This is the main body of the video. One, two, three. Right. That way, when you're importing the content into your video application, right, your video program, whatever you're using, something like OpenShot, for example. That's open source, by the way. Cross platform, by the way. Right. It's available. It's available. It's available on Mac, Windows, and Linux. By the way, so for all of you that use any of one of those, right? It just makes it easier because now you know. Oh, I need this. So let's bring in the intro, let's bring in body, clip one, and so forth and so forth, right? And you bring in your kind of main video that you want to bring in, right? Your A roll, right? Your primary role, for example. And then when you bring that in, and now this will apply to like if you're on a mobile side too, right? Once you bring in all that footage, right? That core, I say core, right? Like this is the main parts of the video, right? You're gonna see them one way or another, or clips of it one way or another. You might edit them down, trim out the fat, so to speak, right? Take out the pauses and all that stuff as much as possible. Try to condense and be more concise on the video as much as possible, right? Just editing allows you to remove beeps or or anything along the lines of that, or you know you want to do something like that, right? That way you have kind of like a rough estimate of time, rough copy, or a draft of this is kind of how it's done progress, right? How to you're because let's just say you're trying to do like a how-to video on how to beat this level in a game, for example. Well, you would start from the beginning of the level and end up at the end of the level, facing the final boss or whatever, the big obstacle or whatever, right? That's in your way. In a how-to video or DIY video, you would start from, this is what I'm gonna do. You're gonna see a progress of what's going on in terms of building it or making it, and then a finish or final product at the end, for example, right? And you might show a sneak peek at it at the beginning, for example, right? So with that said, now you got some point. Okay, now I'm working on this, right? And once you kind of get that A roll, right, that primary video, kind of more or less, hopefully more, right? Then you can start adding in certain, the more things to kind of spice it up a bit, right? For example, where you're adding something like B-roll if you shot some B-roll or some extra little side clips, so let's say multi-camera angles and stuff like that, right? And kind of adding them in, stuff like that. Then maybe you're adding in like some overlays. Now in the apps, it's known as stickers and applications, right? Basically like graphical type of icons or GIFs, GIF, or images, right? This may be the time you want to be adding in your channel icon, for example. Let's just say I was doing a gaming channel or whatever, and this is where I'm starting to add that in. Maybe I'm adding in the seal right there, right? Putting it in, that branding in and stuff like that, and just kind of putting it out there. Well, I'm putting it out there, putting it into the video now. Rough way, right? Maybe in the corner for momentarily, right? Until I'm seeing how I want to progress through it, right? How I want to allow it to transition through the video. And this may be you know, the time to like be like, you know, in this one spot where I'm like, I have like a half a second or a half a second or something like that. Maybe I can add in one of those thumbs ups or something like that, right? Or in this case, let's say on the YouTube side or something like that, subscribing type of thing, right? Maybe it may be one that you grab from an off online, that's like a green screen version or something along the lines of that, or a sticker or something like that, right? Then you probably would obviously want to add a sound effect like a ding ding or a check or something like along the lines of that, right? So basically now you're starting to have like this as you start doing this and you start doing this throughout this your current video, your next video, and something like that, you start to have your own kind of flow or workflow. Yes, workflow into it, where it becomes this and this and this and this, right? And try, and I say try, try to finish stuff things the previous step beforehand as much as possible, so you don't have to keep re-scrolling through it and stuff like that. Because honestly, let's say you got 2 hours to edit, 3 hours to edit. Well, you want to be spending that whole time doing the whole video, right? And not spending 2 hours, not spending 2 hours for the 5-second clip, right? Or something that you're gonna have fun with. Working on, trying to work on that stuff that's kind of even more difficult, right? Put in the time for it too, so that way it has its own time, right? You bring in that own time because that easy stuff that how you don't kind of do it. You know, it's like an intro or an outro. You just rough it in, right? You just rough it in. You get a pretty good idea of what you want, right? Maybe you have like for me, for example what I do here on the channel, right? I mean, I have an outro, right? My standard type of outro for the most part, right? Sometimes I condense it down. Sometimes, it I actually say it, or I have computer generated voice say it. So, I generally know that this is how it's gonna play out. I just might fine tune it specifically for the video or for the live stream or something like that for the content, right? Depending on what I'm showing, right? That's if you do an outro, right? An intro, for example, maybe I like shorter intros personally, But if you want to do a longer intro, that's fine, right? Each one to their own, right? Right? It's your channel, right? Do what you want to do, right? And if it's too long, too short, whatever, change it, right? You know, it could be as simple as like a simple "Welcome back, friends" or whatever, and then you just kind of get into it right away. So it's like not even really an intro. It's like 2-3 seconds, all right? And you're just getting into it right away, right? The content. So people are engaged right away and not kind of hopefully not skipping forward too overly much, right? Because especially in time, you want to vary it up because if you keep putting the same intro, people might start skipping because especially people that've seen it many many times, right? And remember, people only have so much time to watch content, right? So if they're clicking on your video, you want them to kind of watch as much as possible, get that audience retention, and keep the video as long as necessary, right? Not too much fluff, but you don't want to be like cutting out too much, right? I don't think anyone wants to watch a how-to video or a DIY video and they don't even, and just cuts off. You don't actually see a finished product or it's missing steps or something like that because that may not be so helpful, for example. So coming back to this organization part of it, right? You got your main timeline, your main stuff, right? The main footage, kind of B-roll that you want to put in somewhere, right? Stickers, for example, or graphics, channel icons, avatars, stuff like that, branding type of stuff. Maybe that, subscribing thing, those thumbs up thing, hit the bell notification type of things, right? And now fine tune all of that, right? You want to fine tune all that, maybe you're bringing, um, for example, like B-roll, right? Well, you may want to, fade it in or, and stuff like that, where basically, you know, you hear me saying something, but you see some B-roll fly come in, right? Usually that's an overlay in the applications. It would be an overlay or a sticker. That's usually what's known as in in apps, in these video editing apps. As far as I know, for most part, they name it as stickers or overlays. One of the two. I know one of the apps names it as PIP, picture in picture. So but basically, it's like basically it's used for adding B-roll or something along the lines of that, or video overlay, right? Right? Because honestly, video editing is layering stuff, right? So you can layer in stuff and add stuff in, right? Now, I almost forgot to mention, because it slipped my mind, right? On your aid roll, right? This is where you're also putting in transitions in. Maybe you're not just a jump cut to the next scene, right away. Maybe you're putting in a transition, stuff like that. You probably want to do that too, right? And also, you're tweaking this for your video, right? So if you don't like it, you tweak it, right? But the idea is hopefully parts that you are liking are sticking, right? And you're moving on towards the next part of the video and not hopefully not kind of backtracking overly much and stuff like that. Because like when I do my videos and stuff like there's always certain parts that I will backtrack, but then there's other parts where I'm like, oh yeah, this is good. This is gold material right here. This is solid or as best as I can do it right now, right? For whatever content is, right? I'm sold on this. I'm totally keeping it like this, right? You know, let's say like my walking videos or something like that. Oh yeah, I want the walking towards the camera or something like that. Or yeah, this is how I'm gonna start the video for sure, right? So I'm less worried about that. I can, polish it up a little bit later, right? I got a pretty good rough outline of it, really good outline, right? It's almost like polished, but not quite, right? So because you want to, like I said, if you only have 3 or 4 hours to work on like content, right, or whatever, right, you want to be able to allocate all that 4 hours to everything as much as possible, right, and hopefully have some time left over for some of the harder, more difficult, challenging parts of the video, whatever it is, right? It just depends, right? I mean, sometimes for me, the more challenging part is like kind of what I want to use as a transition or something like that. I might just have a jump cut, where it goes literally to the next scene. I'm just not sure what I want as a transition in or the timing of it yet. So I'm working on that. All right. So I'm tweaking that. Right. Especially if I'm adding in B-roll, right? Where I'm just like, I don't like how that looks, right? So I'm just tweaking it, polishing it up a bit, right? Now, something like for anyone that does use audio tracks, like music and stuff like that, obviously, you want to use stuff that's quote unquote open source, free to use, right? Copyright claims and all this stuff for audio is a big thing here on YouTube, right? I mean, people have had that. People have had issues with that, right? And I mean, I've heard stories and stuff like that. I've even recently heard about someone that I'm subscribed to. They uploaded it. They did all the stuff. They did the end screens. They did do all this editing, the description, the cards, and all that stuff, just to find out that there's a content ID or a copyright claim because they had something playing in the background. They didn't show it, but it picked up the audio and they had to reshoot their whole thing again, right? I mean, also they already filled up the description, all that stuff, so they just probably copy and pasted. But that's something to be aware of, right? Because yeah, that's something to be aware of. That's why, and I mean, I've had this one instance on a video where I was, and actually it's the sunflower video where I had a different audio track from what I was originally using, right? That audio track wasn't the original one that I chose. I actually chose something else, but it triggered the content ID. Now that's not copyright claim or whatever, but I'm like, so I went back to the audio track that I had in the editor, right, in the video app, and kind of changed it out to something else, right, and then re-uploaded it, and it's all good, right? Obviously, it's a lot public and all that stuff, but I mean, it's happened to me too, right? And I'm just like, you know, so sometimes be aware of stuff like that. Be ready to, this is why saving your project file and stuff like that and your project file, your video files and stuff like that, until maybe even until like it actually is public and people are watching it and there hasn't been per se quote unquote claim on it, right? That way, if you gotta change something or whatever, you still could and re-upload or whatever, right? So those things I keep in mind because yeah, it does happen and it happens to the best of us too. Apparently, even big channels or larger channels too, right? It's just one of those things, right? As a content creator, right? Especially here on this platform and such, right? Things can happen, right? And yeah. So getting back into that kind of workflow, right? I mean, when you're adding in music and whatever, right? Do listen to it, right? Do listen to it, right? It's just like the video aspect. Don't watch it frame by frame or whatever. Just make sure you didn't. Oh, that's too bright. That's too much or whatever. It's just like the audio track. Like hopefully your volume in terms of speaking, if you're speaking into it, right, or a dialogue or something like that, is loud enough that you can hear it, right? Try it out on like your headphones, over your phone or speakers, right? You know, because if you do put music in or something like that, make sure it's not overwhelming the dialogue, right? Like I'm talking right now. If I had music playing, I don't want the music overwhelming or overloading so high that you can't actually hear me talking because it defeats the purpose. The audio track is kind of like that music track is kind of like keep the flow going, right? If I'm not speaking, it can go a little bit higher, for example, right? Maybe at the end if I'm not speaking or something like that, or you're just seeing like a time lapse, for example, right? There may be no dialogue, so you can have an audio track. I mean, audio track, a music track that's relatively at per se, quote unquote, 100%. So you don't want to, like I said, so you want to make sure that it's not too overwhelming, right? Because audio can be too loud too. Audio can be too soft too, right? So you want to kind of see and you know have people listen to it, right? Even if you family members, parents, or whatever, be like show a clip to someone and be like, "Hey, is this audio too loud?" Or something. Hey guys, is this audio clip too loud? Because I was trying to. Can you guys hear me on your side? Whatever headphones, speakers, or whatever you're using, right? Because people use different mediums to watch the content, like a TV, a phone, a laptop, a tablet, along the lines of that. So make sure, okay, yeah, maybe I could lower the music volume just a tad, right? Or tweak it so the dialogue is still can still be heard, right? Because it's one thing if video isn't the greatest sometimes, but if dialogue or the audio track is too soft, then you can't hear people talking or the person talking, or for example, right? If it's how-to video, well, you know, they can people may excuse you for having like poor lighting, something like that. But if they can't hear you or it's too messed up in terms of too soft or whatever, it's kind of hard, right? I mean, like I've seen videos where I'm like, I actually had to turn up the volume all the way up, right? On the way up on like speakers, or where I actually have to use like me very loud amplified speakers because it's not loud enough. So I know I'm trying to actually project my voice as much as possible right now, so it's loud enough. Because you can only, for the most part, if it's too loud, it's possible to lower your volume on your headphones or whatever, your speakers, whatever, right? But if it's not loud enough, you can only turn it up so high, too, right? And you want it some kind of normalize, right? Because remember, people are watching content and stuff like that. You don't want like you know this this kind of talking then out of nowhere, this loud ding ding, right? Sorry, headphone users, right? Because remember, some people are listening on headphones and stuff like that, or didn't realize that you're gonna send uh have a big loud sound, and they're watching at night with people in their room or whatever, or loved ones or something in bed or whatever, with someone's you know they're you know in the room with them, right? And it's one of those things. So right, because they're too quickly trying to lower the volume, right? So but they're trying to raise it high enough so they can hear it. Like maybe they're using headphones, which is different, but you know, 'cause it's like the headphone users, right? You don't want to be like, hopefully, making loud sounds that may irritate or be discomforting for the ears, like high pitched sounds and stuff like that, right? Because it's just like, right? I've experienced that, and and I done stuff like drop stuff or whatever, right? So that happens to the best of us, right? Trying to avoid that, right? It's out of respect for your end user, right? Because you want them to keep paying attention, listening, and watching as long as possible, right? You don't want them clicking away or anything like that. You want them engaging into your content as much as possible, right? And like I said, to the point and something like that, concise as much as possible, right? I'm still and yes, I'm saying these things, but I'm also always thinking I gotta improve on these things myself too, right? I can say all the stuff, all the stuff that other people say, other content creators tutorials say, right? But I also have to put it into action too, right? Apply it to my own videos or streams myself. Just looking at the timer. So that's why when you're doing this, like I said, consider these things, right? Regardless if you're using whatever you're using to edit it with, right? I'm not even getting into like the technical. This is more technical side, but like the names or the brands of applications, right? The programs or app names out there, right? Like I said, you know, and some of them do excel at certain little things better. Some of them are paid. Some of the stuff is behind a subscription service, or it's under the premium service, so you don't have access to it. Some of them are free. Some of the stuff is paid only, right? There's no free version of it, right? And stuff like that. There's so many out there in your in the app store and stuff like that. You know, you know. Take a look at people reviewing them or showing them and stuff like that. If it's something you can get into or would enjoy using, well, consider trying it out, right? Read, like you can read the reviews and stuff like that, but remember that's just a point of view, right? Sometimes the best way to learn something is to actually use it or do it yourself. Just because, and do your own research and stuff like that. Because at the end, the best application or program is the one that you can use. It works for you, and you understand it, and you can actually put out content as a content creator, right? Because at the end of the day, you want to be putting out video, right? I guess as a content creator, that's you're trying to put out content. That's why you're on said platform, right? Because you're actually putting out content or a reel or whatever, right? Or shorts or whatever, right? You know. and figure out your own kind of workflow as much as possible. And what I said earlier in the stream, like just a kind of general way of doing it, right? You know, because like I said, some people do content creators. Some of these content creators, right? It's not a full time job, right? It may seem like it at times, but it's not, right? They do other things. They have real world stuff they have to do, and maybe it's just a side gig, right? So they can only have so much time to record a video, edit, and do all this other stuff, and watch content too, right? So you want your workflow as streamlined as possible and as kind of to the point as possible, right? So you're not overly wasting time, right? By You know what I mean? Like, so, you bring in your A footage first, maybe your B-roll, you fine tune that, your B-roll, you fine tune that, you bring in stickers, overlays, and stuff like that, kind of fine tune that wherever you want to put them, right? Stuff like thumbs ups, ring the notification bells, the subscriber in things and stuff like that, right? You know, pick spots that are suitable, right? And, and it goes without saying, right? The more you have to work with, the more you have to work with in post, right? Give yourself enough footage to use, right? Because like I said, reshooting can be difficult or impossible, right? Especially, let's say, if you were let's say you're doing a traveling thing, right? You want to shoot as much footage as possible, right? So you can have more to work with in post production, right? Because Yeah, because if you only shot like 5 minutes of footage on that cruise, well, you're only gonna have maximum 5 minutes of footage. You may have a little bit more if you put in some, slowed it down, slow mo, or something like that, or some stock or whatever, an intro and outro. But generally, you still have only 5 minutes to work with, right, of footage. But if you recorded like 20, 30 an hour worth of footage, multiple clips, multiple takes, well, you could choose the best one. Choose one you want, all right? And everything else, you just trim out the rest of it, right? Trim out the fat, so to speak, right? And just kind of fine tune it back down again, right? So, and remember, everyone, and it goes without saying, especially, well, actually, on both the mobile and the laptop or desktop side, save your work, right? If you're on the laptop, desktop doing this kind of stuff, right? Control S, right? Whatever the keyboard shortcut is. Hopefully, that application you're using, that program you're using, has that, right? Save your work. Use the keyboard shortcuts. That's what it's there for, to save you time, right? Make sure it save your work, right? Every so often, especially the more complex it is, right? Maybe even make an inline copy of that project file, right? Just so, if you do something that you can't kind of fix, you can revert back to a safe state that you do know that you can still revert back to a version, like version 2 or whatever, right? I mean, like, even in the applications on the mobile side, it allows you to duplicate the project file, right? So sometimes I'm just like, okay, I got this. Now I could do this. Maybe, you know what? I'm gonna ex- exit out of the project. I'll make quick save, for example, right? Or it'll ask you or whatever, and I'll make a duplicate or a copy of it, and work on the copy and be like, see how is this the way I want to approach it, right? So that way, if it is something I want to approach, then I can still save that. I can still save that, right? But if it isn't, I didn't ruin the original copy, the original one, right? Because sometimes it's easier instead of trying to undo, right? Sometimes it's just easier. If I just made a copy in the first place, I could just revert back to the original, right? Because I'm working on a copy of it. That makes any sense. I mean, sometimes I do that every so often, right? And stuff like that, right? So that's something also I do too. So because I feel like that actually helps because things happen. You can, or you move things in the wrong direction or something like that, or it's just like, how come it's doing this? How come keep seeing this one little thing when I'm scanning through it, right? When I say scanning through it, you're dragging your playhead, all right? That's the playhead, all right? Usually it's a vertical line or something like that. Usually, yeah, it's the playhead usually, and then the play is both in the applications and on the programs, right? And it's your playhead, right? Whatever's on the playhead is what you see on screen, right? And you drag it, you start scanning through it, right? And stuff like that. And like I said, check to make sure that it's in the way that you want it, right? Right. I've had to do revisions too where I'm just like, you know, because you want to catch everything, right? In post as much as possible, right? You don't want to be uploading and be like, and then checking it, and it's like, oh, I should have used that error word. Instead of saying I said, or I used the wrong icon or whatever, right? Check it in post, right, before you even upload, right? Because by the time you upload, it's kind of, I mean, aside from being copyright or whatever, right? The video and all, it should be all good, right? Like I said, like play the video before you upload, right? It'd be like, okay, you know, be satisfied with what you're putting out there, right? Or you're content with what it's not be, and something like that, right? Because those things, yeah. Some of this stuff has happened to me before, or I've heard of stories, or from other content creators, and from what they post and stuff like that. I mean, like I hear these stories, right? And just like you know, as a content creator, let's remember this stuff, right? Because let's try to because you want to enjoy the process of content creating, right? Whatever it is, the enjoyment of doing it, right? Of putting out content out there, right? Even 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 as a content creator, I know this is away from the editing for tad bit, right? Even if you're just recording and uploading straight away, which I've done one video, so it's just one take or something like that. Stuff like picking the time of day, lighting, projecting your voice so people can hear you, right? Those things still apply regardless, right? Regardless if you edit or not, you know. How many times have you seen videos that say it's like, this is take two of it, take three of it because my memory card corrupted or this jet flew by when I was in the middle of it or something like that. And I know some people keep that stuff in and they just kind of, oh look here, there's a going by, and they just kind of like jump cut or or do one of those J or L cuts. I'm still trying to add those in every so often. I mean, it kind of looks like I do, but anyways, I digress. Give me one sec here. Doing all this talking, dries out my mouth. So let's see here. Yeah. So trying out the stuff, right? I mean, there's a lot out there, right? Like I said, right now on my phone, on the device I'm using for editing, or on a mobile device, I actually have 9 editors, 9 apps on the phone right now. I'm not saying you need 9 apps. Remember, I'm a content creator, and I've been doing this for a bit, right? So I'm used to the terminology, right? It's basically the reason why I even have 9 in the first place is because some of them do certain little things that I like, or things that I like more, right? I'm like, oh, I like the stickers over here better, or this is the music over here is better, right? Or the interface is easier over here, or the effects that I can are available are better over here, or I like this effect more. Ooh, I like this ring effect, right? That goes around, right? And I've shown that in the video, right? right? Or animation or transitions or color correction is better over here, right? I mean, I generally use one as a primary, and then the other 8 are like secondary, kind of where I've added footage from those, right? And stuff like that. I mean, I've been trying out like, and I guess I should mention this, right? I forgot to mention this in terms of on the apps, programs probably still exist, but some of the apps, there's gonna be a watermark, right? Something like that, and I might post a video or whatever somewhere or add it in or whatever somewhere or do it as a separate video or whatever or of where they all line up on the same video. So you can actually see some of the watermarks are bigger, some of them are smaller. Not all of them are in the bottom right hand corner, some of them are on the top right hand corner, and some of them are on the bottom left hand corner. As far as I know, I've never seen one on the top left hand corner. They seem to be on the right side or on the bottom left, right? So, that's not a hit or that's not a deal breaker for me, right? That's not a deal breaker for me because I've seen those out there, and let's see, InShot, Power Director, right? I don't pronounce it well, but Kine or Keen, Mas, yeah, Keen Master, right? Right, and stuff like that. So I see that stuff, right? I see the bar marks, right? And I'm just like, okay, right. But then there's other applications that don't have a watermark and stuff like that. And remember, some of them may not have a watermark, but they may have error limitations, right? And you have to kind of get by, because if you I shouldn't say subscribe, but uh, pay for the premium parts of it, right? You don't get a watermark. You're able to do more. You get more transitions, right? There's no watermark on the bottom right hand corner and stuff like that. And pricing is all different and all that stuff. Go take a look, right? I mean, I've just been looking at like things that are readily available, right? Without cost yet, right? Because honestly, paying is paying, right? So stuff like that. And then, some of them are monthly, weekly, monthly, yearly, or whatever, right? You know, stuff like that. So, try out the free stuff first, right? Try the free stuff first, right? Try out the free stuff first, right? Before you even commit to paying for something, right? Because you want to be able to enjoy it, right? You don't want to be paying for something that you don't like to use or find it frustrating or does certain things that you don't want happening all the time, right? And then because it would just frustrate you, right? If I paid for something and it just started to kind of frustrate me, then I'm more likely to not want it anymore and stuff like that. So and you don't want to put the cash in the trash, so to speak, right? So try the free stuff first and see what you can even do with the free stuff right out there, the freeware or the free apps out there, because you'd be surprised what you can even do with free stuff nowadays. I mean, like in the past, like I said, I used to run a gaming channel back a long time ago, right? Back then, the stuff available for video editing in terms of programs, because the mobile side was very limited at that time, right? I mean, the stuff you could get for free was very limited, and things that you can compare to what is available nowadays, right? Nowadays is just like I could do stuff in like OpenShot, yeah, OpenShot on on a desktop or laptop, and it's like as good as stuff that I did back when I used to have a gaming channel or used to run a gaming channel. I could do all that stuff that I used to do in the gaming channel, just in that and OpenShot, for example, and that's just and this. that's an open source, and it's free, right? Cross-platform too, right? So Windows, Mac, or Linux. So it's available on all platforms, right? There's no mobile side as far as I know, but you know, but who knows, right? I know some of these programs are transitioning or having a mobile version. I've been hearing things about that, so keep that in mind too, right? Because I just heard about one like literally today, like literally today at the time of this recording slash uh, stream. So I'm just like, oh wow, that's interesting, right? And some new ones that I even haven't even heard about, right? So you know, but yeah, try out the free stuff, right? I mean, there's ones out there, there's apps out there that are free, no watermark, right? They may have their limitations, whatever, right? You know, or functionality or something like that, or they may have less or certain things, or if you want some more stickers or whatever, that's a premium or something along the lines of that. Or I mean, I know there is other ones that or it's ad supported, I should say, right? You can watch a 5-10 second ad in the beginning before the program loads up, right? There may be an ad while you're exporting, right? Exporting is the same. It's like rendering. Basically, you're finalizing or making a finished video file that you can use later in another video editor, or to upload, for example, to YouTube, or send it to people, or share it, or share it on with your other social media, right? That's what exporting, rendering, kind of finalizing it means, right? Because that's an automatic. Well, you have to do that with any editor, regardless if it's a program or an application, right? Now, when you do use these applications, do be aware, for the most part, as far as I know, for most part, I think all of them, if not all of them, like most of them, if not all of them, when you're exporting, rendering out the video, you cannot lock your screen. It will actually say, please do not lock the screen while while finalizing exporting out video, or switch to another application, right? So keep that in mind. So, you know, that's if it's a long video or something like that, or it may seem like it takes a while to render it out, right? Dim down your display. You don't need your display all the way up, all the way up to max when you're rendering, especially if you're on battery, right? On battery or low on battery, or trying to conserve battery, you only have a battery bank. Let's say you're out, out camping, you're trying to kind of do a little bit of editing of some of the content you're going to be posting onto like your social media later, once you get back to where you have service and like Wi-Fi or connection, right? Or data connection, right? Well, it would be nice to, right? Because sometimes some of the rendering or whatever can take a bit, especially the longer the videos are, right? Or the more complex it is, right? The more layers you have in there, the longer it is. It's gonna take longer to render. You know, I mean, I've had it where it takes me 5 minutes to render a whole like 20-second clip, 20 seconds, 30 seconds of video, just because how complex it is. And of course, it depends on the resolution, right? If obviously, 720p, 10 full HD compared to 4K, right? The higher the resolution, yes, it's gonna take longer too. So keep that in mind too, right? So this is why I say, especially if your battery's kind of not the greatest on your mobile device and stuff like that, maybe dim your display right before you hit export and finalize that export or render, where it goes to that next screen, you know, kind of go back to your menu or whatever, alt tab, as I I always call it alt tabbing, but that's because I'm used to seeing that from like a desktop laptop side. But dim your display down just a tan, right? You don't need it all the way up, and let it render, right? You know, stuff like that. Because those things are definitely do help, especially like I said, especially if you're on battery, right? You know, on battery, no charger, no battery bank or something like that. And you're just trying to do something quickly, right? Maybe you're on the train, on a plane, or something like that. You're coming back from a trip or something and you're on a plane, right? And you're like, obviously you're not gonna have data or Wi-Fi per se, right? So, you might have power, right? But, you're just kind of conserving power because it's a 6 hour flight, right? But you just kind of want to get a little bit of that editing done as much as you can, right? And some of these editors, you know, in terms of the applications, anyways, right? It's different on the program side. Because usually the programs are kind of like all right when you download them and install them. Usually what you get is what you get, regardless if you're online or not. There's not so much per se DLC, right? Downloadable content. On the app side, I've noticed that some of them, let's say, you're in like no Wi-Fi, no data or whatever, right? And then that happens, right? You go camping or something like that in a subway or something like that. You're probably not gonna get data. You're not gonna, so you don't have per se quote unquote internet access, right? Some of them, some of the features, some of the things like stickers and stuff like that require an internet connection. Some of them. You would have to see which ones do or not, and it differs from application to application, I found, right? One may do this, may be really good. Yeah, it's really good. I like to use it all the time, but certain little things you can't do without an internet connection. You need to be connected to Wi-Fi or with data, right? Because it needs to retrieve that DLC, that downloadable type of content. Let's say a sticker, for example, right? And some of them may require you to kind of almost download it beforehand or use it beforehand. Because if you don't have internet connection and you're trying to use a sticker you've never used before, it'll say no internet connection um, seen or internet internet connection required, right? And I've seen this, right? Because I've been trying this out, these applications on both with a connection and without, right? Because like I said, the outdoor community, the people that go traveling, like stuff like that. Gamers, yeah, they're probably always gonna have a connection somewhere, right? They're probably always, that's a given, right? DIYers and stuff like that, they're at home and stuff like that, they're probably not have a connection, right? But things like the people that do traveling videos, right? Or, hiking through the mountains, right? They might want to be like, they're just sitting by the campfire for a little bit for 20 minutes, 30 minutes. It's like, oh, yeah, maybe I'll start setting up my footage right away, set up the project file and all that stuff, right? They may not have data. And obviously, they're not have Wi Fi. So some applications or apps may be better, right? I know, because some applications allow you, like on a mobile side, to have save file, right, and stuff like that. And like I said, some of these things are under premium type of service, right, or pay to use, right? So it depends, right? There's so many out there, and like I said, I'm using 9 on this device, on this smartphone right now. I don't use all 9 all the time, but there's certain little things I like about all 9. That's why I'm keeping them around. Maybe this better chroma key, green screen, right? You know, maybe this does better slow mo, right? It processes better, right? You know, and stuff like that. Or maybe hey, this one does 4K, while this application doesn't do 4K, right? You know, and stuff like that. So yeah, and some of them also require you to actually keep your video or image footage on the camera. Like if you, let's say I recorded myself running through the woods, right? I made a project file and stuff like that. Some of the programs, if you remove that running through the woods video off your camera roll, for example, the project will be like, no, sorry, we cannot find the footage, right? Because it refers to it. Not all of them, but I think many of them do. Some of them don't, but it'll keep a copy of it in the project file. But you have something to be aware of, right? Because I know spaces always can be an issue with content creators, right? Especially if you're recording in 4K, right? You don't fill up that 128 gigabytes, 256, 64, whatever, right? Pretty quick, especially if you're shooting like long videos, right? Here's an hour long video. Well, that's probably gonna take a lot of space per se on your phone, right? Especially if you're recording it at a high resolution. You're doing slow mo on your phone, right? Where you're recording a slow mo or time lapse, or let's just say, here's a 4K at 60 frames per second, or slow mo at 240, 120 frames per second, right? It's for them to take up a lot of space, especially the longer the video is. Because the longer the video is, or the higher the resolution is, the more space it's going to take up, right? So that's something to factor in, right? Also, clear space as needed, right? You know, for example, like some of the last previous videos I did, I don't actually need to keep that footage or the project files, right? They were just to show, right? So I'm not too worried. I can recreate those or whatever. And they were only a minute long videos anyways, right? But to free up space, I've removed those project files and the video files associated with it, right? You know, you going outside for a walk, right? I don't need to actually keep that footage. It's not that big of a deal, right? It's not to be a deal breaker if I don't have that footage, right? Because I can recreate them because I'll just go out for that on their walk, right? I can do the exact same thing. I can recreate that easily. But if you put together something like a continuous type of series or something like that, it's just like if I'm doing like the resource holes that I've done here on the channel, right? I actually kept the project file and the things in there because I know I don't use them again, for example, right? That way I don't have to recreate that again. Even though I could, it saves me time just to keep it around. It's worth the space it takes them versus the time it would take to recreate the project file, right? Especially if you have like an intro or something like that, right? You know, or an outro or something along the lines of that, right? And like I said, like anything, all right, have a back up your data, right? Back up your data, all right? Because it sucks losing data, especially if it's something important or something that's hard to recreate or irreplaceable, right? I mean, that goes without saying, right? Two is one and one is none, right? And have multiple sources of it, right? Redundancy is important when it comes to that, right? Because nothing sucks more than losing data at times, right? Well, it just isn't great, right? Especially if you put work into it and stuff like that. Yeah, yeah. It's happened to me. It's happened to me. All right, I'm trying to be more diligent about it. Of making a copy of it, whatever, right? Local copy, like to external hard drive, memory card, whatever, right? USB device stick, whatever, right? Cloud copy, and maybe an offsite copy, right? Where it's just like you trust your mom and be like, hey, here's a copy of my content, right? For example, right? Maybe it's encrypted so no one else can really get into it, but you have an offsite copy of it, right? So, a secondary copy is on your desk or whatever in form of hard drive. You have a cloud copy, and now you have an offsite copy that's a physical, per se, quote unquote, physical copy, right? So you can't get online, well, you can still grab that hard drive from your mom, for example, right? From your parents or loved one or significant other, sister, cousin, whatever, right? Someone you trust, right? And you know, for example, right? And if something happens to that copy, well, hopefully you have that online copy, right? And and then, like I said, name your stuff, right? Name your stuff as much as possible because and don't just leave it untitled or it's generic or what the manufacturer puts it as a name as MVI blah 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 blah, blah, right? Change the name, something more specific, right? That way when you're looking it up, let's say searching for it, you know, instead of looking at the thumbnail, trying to figure it out, you just search for it or look for the title of it, right? Name, right? It'd be much, much easier than trying to have to open up the video file individually and just to see what's this video file? What did I name this? This says untitled video. What was this again? No, 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 no. Try not to do that. Right? Try to name it something where it's just like, oh, this is the sunflower in the spring of 2022 or something like that. 2023. And now you would know, right? Like a team what it is, best description you can give it, whatever it is, right? Maybe it's an outro that says, this is an outro that's, you know, for example, for me, I'd be like saying something, outro adapted text that I have, all right? And maybe this one has a CR in it, and maybe I dated for like the year at least, right? If not the month, at least the year, right? Where it says 2022, for example, and it has something you can use, right? Like I said, you're giving yourself more markers, more to work with, right? It's just like how I said about like multi-camera angles. You just say 1, 2, 3, or 3 claps, right, or something like that to indicate something because you're giving yourself markers, visual markers. It's just like saying like in your videos. I should have said this earlier, but I can apply it now. Like if you're saying, and especially if you can edit later, right, in post, be like, okay, this is take two, right? Those clapper things that they have, and that you're familiar with. You may have seen in movies or whatever, right? There's a reason why they do that, right? It's to indicate, you know, this is not after that the video was actually starting, right? Everything before that, that can be removed in post, right? That can be removed. That can be trimmed out, right? It's like where they're like, and action, right? There's a reason why they do that, right? It's just so and stuff like that. And maybe even before that, maybe you're saying, okay, this is day 2 of this trip at 8 a.m., right? That way you have visual audio clues when you're editing. Because let's say you're coming back to this or weeks later, or let's just say you're giving someone this to edit. If you give them those clues, they'd be like, "Oh, now I know exactly where this is, when it is, where it is," because there's audio clues or visual clues on screen, right? And they can just trim that out in post, but it allows them to see it, right? Or allows you to see it or hear it. That way, you'd be like it's like visual markers. They're like breadcrumbs, for example, right? So you don't get lost. It's just like putting breadcrumbs or whatever markers on your path or whatever, so you don't get lost, so you can retrace your steps. It's kind of the same thing, right? Where it's just like, I mean, I've said, I've started to say like in videos or whatever, you don't see it because I edit that out in post. Where it's just like, I start saying something and I'm like, ah, then I stumble or I'm like, oh, that's not what I wanted to say. Okay, take two. I'll say take two, right? Then afterwards, that's what you would see in the video, or I would use in the video, right? That way, I can hear it. All I have to do is just hear it, and I'll be like, oh, anything before that, I'm kind of trimming that out, right? I don't need that, right? That's just excess stuff I don't need, right? Well, that way, hopefully, it saves you some time, right? And just like the naming of the stuff and stuff like that, right? Even your project files on your apps, right? If you have project files, try to name them. It's just as important as naming them on the program side if you're doing like a laptop or a desktop, because those are very important. Because again, especially if you have once you as a content creator or people that create videos in general, right, or whatever, right, or are files anyways. You don't have a lot. You're not just gonna have one or two. You don't have a lot different folders and all that stuff. You don't want a bunch of untitled, unnamed folders. No, 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 no. Be more specific as best as you can. Describe it. I mean, sometimes I'm just describing it from what I can see, or and something like that. Or maybe sometimes I'm trying something out or whatever. I'll be like, here's a CR Swervo 2023, 2021, 2022, right? It's just kind of at least it gives you a sense of what it could be without actually opening it or without seeing the thumbnail of it, right? That way, hopefully, if you're looking for something or whatever, you may remember that name so you can search for it too, right? Because you actually have a name associated with it, the file, for example, or the project file, right? It's a little bit easier to search for, oh, CR Swerble 2023 versus why do I have all these untitled folders and names and files, right? Take a little bit of time, be proactive about it, right? Some forethought on it. It may save you time later having to try to find something, especially if you're gonna run an update on it, a different version of it. Maybe a project file you're transitioning it over to another platform or whatever, and you want to re-render it out, but you have to find it. Oh, I want this video. Right? I know I have the project file, right? But where did I put it? Right? And kind of taking a minute or so to name it may save you 20 minutes later trying to find it later when you have to use that project file or use it again. So hopefully these tips, suggestions are something you can consider for your own for content creators out there, right? Content creator starts with a C, ends with an R, just like CR. I had to throw that in there because I know I didn't specifically go really in depth into like applications or programs. I gave a couple of names that you might have heard out there, right? Because I think I'll do another video or a dedicated video or stream towards specifically certain things. Because, like I said, this is more of an overview, right? Because there's a lot of overlap. I was going to say overlay. There's a lot of overlap in them, right? Where, like I said, I think, images, graphics could be interchanged, but to a certain degree, but images, right? Static images and stuff like that, like channel icon, and stuff like that, or things that just it looks like an image, maybe just fades in, fades out, right? Music or audio, voiceovers, that's the audio side. The video, motion video, right? Has motion in it, whatever it is. Even if it's an image that's fading in, fading out, you may consider that as video, but it's sort of an image in the beginning, right? Or a static image, or some sort of GIF, JPEG, PNG file, whatever PNG file with transparency, right? And that's another thing I've noticed too about that is about transparency file or transparency images or image PNG files that have a transparent background. And some of them are a little bit different in some of the apps apparently. So it's one of those things I'm like, oh, right. So this is why I have all 9 of these, right? And like I said, I've been trying. I think it's see 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 4 or 5 of them. They're parts of the video editor has in terms of me using the stuff in that editor has made it on the channel in terms of actual video, right? That's out there publicly on the channel or on my other social media. I mean, there's also I almost forgot. There is some applications out there or programs that are web based too, right? And I didn't really get touch based on that too much, right? One of there's one out there that's web based, but they also have an app that you can use too, right? It may look slightly different, and stuff like that. What you can do might be slightly different. Excuse me, right? I mean, like I said, I haven't tried everything, right? Some of the paid ones or whatever, right? I haven't tried them out. I see images or video, but I haven't personally tried it out, so I can't, comment too much on those because I actually have no experience with those. However, some of these free ones, that do or don't have watermarks or, you know, certain things under a premium service that you have to pay for, right? And stuff like that. Some of them, you know, or that are free to try or free to use or whatever, or completely free. Yes, I have used them, right? Some of them I like. I like a little bit more. Some of them a little bit less, right? They all have their pros and cons, their strengths and weaknesses. The user interface. Some of them I like a little bit more. Some of them is just like a little less. Limitations on how much I can add in. For example, I've noticed that where there's some limitations on how much overlays or stickers that I can add in under the same second. All right, under the same second. I've noticed that now. Right, it's something to be aware of, especially if you like to make more complex things or like to add a lot of B-roll or a lot of stickers or overlays in. Right, then something to be aware of. Right, I've noticed that. You know, and stuff like updates too, right? I've noticed I'm like, oh wow, they've updated this, right? Where there's like more transitions, more animation ways for video animations, right? And stuff like that. And some of them you gotta take a look and just be like, oh, yes, you're right. There is slight differences, right? They do, like I said, they all do video, right? Obviously, they all do video, you know. And they all most of them for the most part do audio, right? Most of them do you can add stickers and text in, right? But then there's other little things like, oh, there's limitations on the transition time, right? Or animation time. I've noticed that too, where it's just like where some of them it's like I can make the animation time as long as the clip is. But then there's other apps that it's just like I'm limited to the transition time or animation time that I want to use like a fade in, fade out, whatever, right? Something even as basic as that to 5 seconds, right? But sometimes I want it longer because I need it to be because the effect that I'm trying to pull off or whatever, right? In terms of as a final video product, right? So, and I don't like that at times on certain applications, and then some of the effects or whatever I should say, you know, some of the applications have less. Some of them have more, like a lot more, right? Where it's just like, oh, look at I can do this blur. I can add fire. I can add these flames in. I can add this ice in. I can add this glowing text in. I can, all the stuff that you may have seen in some of these videos I've been pointing out, right? These things you see, yeah. This is why you start to see that a little bit more and more, right? Where it's just like, oh, right. So this is how Sierra's been pulling it off, right? And it's like, yeah. And like I said, I've learned some of this in the past and stuff like that. I'm still learning. Like I said, still a teacher, still a student at this, right? Still willing to learn more about it because I've been looking at some other things like some tutorials or things that people have been pulling off. I'm like, wow, I need to like up my game on it because clearly I'm not. A lot of time I can watch these tutorials and be like, especially if I know the application, be like, oh yeah, yeah, they did this. They imported in their clip in their A roll. They kind of added this transition in. They re-exported it out. They brought it back in, and they green screened it out. There's the text and all that stuff, right? Like that ta-da, you know, editing magic, right? That was just with one program, by the way. That was just with one app, by the way, all right? and that was just with a chroma key, green screen or chroma key, right? Maybe under a cutout or whatever, right? And all that stuff, right? Generally green screen, you pick the color, that specific color, let's just say like whatever, right? And it removes it, and you can fine tune how much you want to remove out of it, right? So you can pull more or less, right? And basically, what really does happen is once you pull that color out, everything that got pulled out, like that color, let's say yellow, for example, for the most part, becomes transparent. So anything behind it in the background will show behind it. So, that's how I kind of did that kind of where I made that where I'm just like I present my hand, the seer is in front of it. Then where my hand's closed, right, and the seer is in front of it, right? That's just an image, right? That was just my channel icon, for example. And as soon as I open my hand, it part of the green screen thing is to it looks like it's behind it, but it's actually an overlay of the original video. So basically, the original video is at the bottom, at the top. I green screened out the background, so you don't see anything. And then I made a duplicate file of it, but it has the seer on it. And basically, the one that has the transparency is at the top. So when you see it, and it looks like it's actually dissolving and fading in and fading out kind of things, right? And it makes it look like the CR is going through my hand or as I'm opening it, right? So it's just like, and of course, the ta-das or the sound effects kind of add to that, right? Sound effects do add to videos too, right? For example, like, for anyone that's watched scary movies, well, scary movies are a little bit less scary, or horror movies are a little bit less scary without the sound. Sound actually really does make scary movies, right? You hear this creaking of the sounds, the wolf sounds, the cat sounds, the meow, or so, and movies like that, right? Try watching those without the sound, without sound, or with the volume way down. They're less scary because visuals can only scare you so much, right? Because they're not really in your face, right? I mean, that eerie kind of sounds, right? And those kind of sell it a little bit more, right? So me putting in this kind of magical kind of sound kind of sold that effect a little bit more than just me showing it on screen in terms of video, right? And and I emphasized it and stuff like that. I think I went from like grayscale with no saturation to like color, right? So it's kind of like a transition, right? And from like grayscale to color and stuff like that. So I find that was quite useful, and that's from a tutorial, right? There's tutorials out there. I mean, there's a lot of tutorials out there, and some of the stuff that you see as tutorials specifically for an application, sometimes you can translate those to other applications that have very similar functionality, like a green screen, like or chroma key, right? If it just needs chroma key and text, well, you probably could do it in our applications that have text or chroma key or green screen, right? Or cutout, right? Stuff like that. So keep that in mind too, right? So I'll probably go for another couple of minutes here. So I do appreciate everyone taking the time to drop in and hear me out, right? Hopefully, like I said, you found this informative, right? Consider this for your own channel out there, for all you content creators out there, right? You know, you know. And if it's new to you, right? If it feels daunting, right? Just take baby steps, right? I get it, right? I get it, right? Because you'd be surprised when not only what you can do, but what you can learn, right? Always have the willingness to learn, right? As much as possible. You know, real world in the virtual or digital world too, right? You know, you know, may help get your message across better. You know, be more entertaining or whatever, more to the point, more concise, right, and stuff like that. B-roll to kind of sell the point of, oh, this is, me reusing this container and examples of it while I'm talking about reusing a container. And so there's some B-roll, uh, in the background where you can see it in my voice of me talking. Like right now, we're just overlapping it, right? Instead of showing the A roll of it, I'm showing the B roll, but I'm using the A roll audio or music or whatever, or talking or dialogue. So, I mean, and like I said, I mean, even as a content creator, like even if you don't want to edit or whatever, or remember lighting, sound, volume, mic, those things are still important, right? I mean, like people want to be able to hear what you're saying or see what you're doing or whatever, right? As much as possible, right? You know, because those are the senses in terms of senses that we use for video, right? Or here on YouTube or whatever you're watching something, right? No, you see it and hear it, right? So hopefully either one of those are good enough to sell kind of your message across, right? You know, for example. So, you know, maybe some people are hard of hearing or far-sighted, or their eyesight's not as good, right? So maybe you have some scripted video and stuff like that where you're explaining it as well as talking about it, or explaining it as well as showing it on screen, for example, right? And yes, I know I'm not showing it on screen. I get that. I think I'll actually have to show an actual video on some of this stuff, right? And you know just go try it out, just try it out, right? So, like, anyways, thank you for everyone for dropping by. Shout out to the replay gang, and you know, just random stuff I'm just gonna show here at the end here, like this, right? Or this, or this. I mean, if you want to do one of these and just like scroll your icon or your hand up to ding, right? Yes, I know I have to change the color of it apparently. Mm, you know, or one of these, right? Uh, I mean, like, I made this counter timer a long time ago, right? Right, something like that. I mean, I made that a long time ago, right? Or one of these, right? Here's something I can put on the screen as a repeater, right? As a video repeater. So it's not just my icon you don't see, it's visuals, right? Stuff like that, so I'm not lagging or frozen, right? Oh, it's still moving, still moving on screen, right? And all that stuff. So thank you everyone for joining me, and remember everyone, as our world changes, we can adapt to skill and knowledge, get better with practice. Like editing can help everyone out there, but one can help someone. All right, everyone, take care. Enjoy the editing process. Enjoy being a content creator out there. All right, and don't give up on being a content creator. Right, enjoy the process. Right, enjoy it. Right. Don't look at it as per se work, but look at it as like something fun, engaging, right? Something you want to do. Because if it's something you want to do, you're more likely to want to do it more often. It's not a necessity. It becomes something you want to do, right? You have the thrill. You have the passion to do it. All right. Take care, everyone. Enjoy your day, and peace out on the one known as CR. Take care, everyone.